Welcome in, everybody, to Fantasy Pros. This is the Fantasy Football Podcast. It is me, Joey P, Joe Pisapia, and today we're going to talk strategy here on the show. It's going to be hero versus zero RB. Which is the better strategy for your fantasy football team, if either, in 2024? And to help me break down the pros and cons of the heroes and the zeros, Derek Brown, of course, D-Bro, the king of bros, and Andrew Erickson, who is so excited because in less than 48 hours, he will be at the Rainforest Cafe with myself and Derek Brown. Erickson, have you already put your pre-order in? That's the question.
No, I want to be surprised. I don't know what even kind of food you can get there. I just know there's animatronic animals everywhere. I don't assume that they have exotic food on the menu. I'm not sure if it would be right if they'd serve you a kangaroo burger and then there's a animatronic kangaroo next to you watching you consume this monstrosity of a sandwich. So I'm looking forward to be surprised.
Anything that could be stuck in a microwave, that's what they have on the menu there.
Yeah, over under Derek Brown of us being ill the next morning. That's the question here as we go to Flex Draft.
You guys act like they serve poison at this restaurant. It's a restaurant.
I told you this before we went live right now.
It's a restaurant in air quotes. I think it's more of a food experience.
It's like the dollar store Chili's, man. Like, I don't know. I feel like I'm being brought here under protest.
I love Chili's. Chili's is great.
Chili's is... Why is Chili's catching... First Seinfeld and now Chili's, D-Bro.
Yeah, catching strays on Chili's, bro. And by the way, Erickson, you did not get the group text, obviously, today about outfits because I'm wearing my Fantasy Pro shirt, Derek's wearing his Betting Pro shirt, and you're wearing their Duran shirt. So next time...
I was actually wearing my Betting Pro shirt, but because it's super humid here, I sweated through it. And I didn't want to say that to
not
the
a company
YouTube
man, tough scene.
Could not let them see the pit stains.
Yeah,
no.
There you go, everybody. All right, we are going to break down the hero versus zero RBs for everybody today. And what's so great about our simulator here over at Fantasy Pros with mock drafting is, the mock draft simulator allows you to employ different strategies, right? You could set the strategy for a zero RB, for late round quarterback, all that different stuff is in there. And I think that's what sets our tools apart from a lot of the others. And you can also, when you have the higher end tools, when you're a premium member, you can really go in there and use the league sync feature to do even more in terms of getting intel on your leagues, the draft intel feature, so many things right now. So if you haven't tried it, we urge you, download the Draft Wizard app, go to fantasypros.com/mock, try it out. But what's fun is if you are new to this strategy, this is a great way to try it out and see if you like the way your rosters look. And if so, then you can employ it after you sync your league in your actual draft. So go ahead and test some of these theories out we're going to talk about today, because that is the best practice, really. It's not just to hear us talk about them, but to go try them out for yourselves, try them out in different draft spots, and see if some of these hero or quote-unquote zero RB theories are the ones to go with. So for those people who might still be a little new, just want to break this down and really get hyper particular about it too, about what is hero RB strategy in your mind. Erickson, when you're talking about hero RB, in your mind, what does that mean? Does that mean, hey, I'm taking a running back in the first round because that's where the really top tier guys are? Is it, I just need somebody that I can really count on? What's your definition of that term?
I think for me, the hero RB strategy is you are taking a certain running back that you think has elite upside at the position. And that doesn't necessarily mean you have to draft that player in round 1, round 2. It usually means you're going to be drafting him pretty early on, just because that's where you see the majority of the highest scoring running backs. They still go first, second, third round overall. So that's the way I view it, is drafting one of those guys and then drafting every other position before you look at your RB2 slot. Essentially, hero RB, to spin it on its head, you're punting off your RB2 position as long as humanly possible. And you're locking and loading one guy. You are committing, I love Breece Hall. He's my hero RB. Ride or die. Let's go. That's how I would view the hero RB strategy.
All right. So, Derek, how do you view the potential dangers then? Like, what's good about this strategy in terms of what it opens up your roster to look like, and what's bad about it? Because when you do put all your eggs in one basket and that basket falls and breaks, could mean the end of your season.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's a certain amount of volatility that arises from both strategies that we're highlighting on the show today, really because you're banking on and drafting, like, you're right, like that one running back that you take in those early rounds, or if you decide to flip this on his head, because I think that's possible too, and drafting a guy pretty similar to that, but going with this approach in round 4, round 5, with some running backs we'll talk about here. But I think looking at that, the danger of it is you're looking at one running back to anchor that spot for you, and really then you're just trying to backfill RB2 on a weekly basis. If that one running back fails, they get hurt, they underperform, that team decides to deploy a committee, and in preseason and draft season, you were looking at, okay, no, I think he's going to have a true workhorse with bell cow upside. If you're wrong about that, then yeah, it's volatile, because then you're talking about, well, I drafted a hero RB team. If the hero fails, then you're really looking at, you're stuck with a 0 running back team, and most likely, because if you follow this to the T, and if that falls by the wayside, if injuries and things don't fall your way, then yes, there's a lot of volatility, but again, it could lead you to the promised land too.
Now let's take a look at the top 13 guys here at running back. And this is our expert consensus rankings. You can find at fantasypros.com/rankings. The top 13 RBs, obviously the first three, CMC, Bijan, Brees Hall. We know those guys are hero RBs. We could say, I'm going to take this guy, and then I'm going to wait for a while to take another running back, depending on what the board looks like and how deep the league is. Obviously, 10-team versus 12-team, this can be a little different too. And on that note too, Andrew, would you say that the hero RB theory is something that you'd be more apt to do in a 10-team league? Because that just kind of popped in my head too. And with the replacement value and depth of those leagues, it feels like a 10-team league, this strategy might be a little bit more viable because the replacement value, either on the waiver wire or even late round draft value, is a little bit more prevalent.
I would agree with that, because you're not going to have as much issues filling in that RB2 slot just based on it only being a 10-team league. So I think that the general strategy in 10-team leagues is you always kind of want to go more towards the elites because there's fewer of them, and that includes drafting a hero running back that you view as elite, that you view can be a top 3 running back and be a difference maker. Ultimately, it's called hero because they actually make a difference. They're not replaceable. They're different. And that's why I think that it makes more sense in a 10-team league to execute that strategy.
That's why Derek's my hero, because he's different. And he means so much to me in the show. Just it's
a good description. Actually, I was waiting for the jab there at the end.
No,
but
don't worry.
It was nice. That was actual pure love, Joey.
I'm just setting you up.
Plenty of time to talk about zeros.
Yeah, I'm setting you up for one later. Yeah.
Yeah. Set me up for the fall.
I'm going to put something in your mozzarella stick when we get to
That's okay.
Cafe.
Don't worry. I can share or change it over. You can get sick too, buddy.
If you flip the script here, let's say you're in a 14-team league, a deeper league, right? Would you then say these 0 or hero RB strategies are more dangerous, Derek?
I think they can be, just depending on the depth of that league and how fast the depth at certain positions dries up. Now, again, like if you're syncing your leagues and using Draft Wizard, you know how your league drafts. So you know, okay, what are the tendencies of certain teams, of certain GMs in your league, and how viable these strategies are, or how can I game the system and basically take advantage of those deeper leagues?
We like to look at the draft pool every year differently, and I think that's something that's very important when it comes to strategy. I know we talk about it here on the shows, we talk about it in the Black Book, we talk about it all the time. All right, and when we're looking at these guys, I mentioned the big 3. We know those guys are heroes. Jonathan Taylor, still a hero for both of you? Yes, correct?
Yes.
Okay, Erickson, yes. Jonathan Taylor still a hero RB for you?
Yes.
Okay, what about Jahmyr Gibbs, Erickson? Still a hero RB for you?
Yes.
Same thing, Derek?
For me.
Yep.
Okay, let's get to Saquon Barkley then, who's number 6. Is that a guy, Derek, that you still view despite the injuries? Now he's in Philadelphia, different offensive line, different quarterback, whole new offense here. Is he still a hero guy for you, the way it's set up this year?
He is, but he's not necessarily the hero that I'm most likely going to pick. In
It's
that
not the
range,
hero D-Bros, Colin.
No, it's not.
Like
I don't have him on the speed dial. No,
So
I don't
he's
have
more of
him
an
on-
Aquaman for you than he
He
is
is,
like a
he is.
Batman.
That's
Is
a
that
good
what it
pull. Yeah.
Okay. All right. What about you, Erickson? Is Saquon Barkley more Aquaman, or is he a little bit more Batman for you? Somebody a little cooler?
He's probably Captain Underpants at this point. I'm not
Captain
calling Saquon Barkley my hero RB.
Underpants is hilarious, by the way.
That's
That
not
is a
because
great
I don't
piece of
recognize the upside that Barkley has. He's in a great
Tra-la-la.
situation with the Philadelphia Eagles running behind a great offensive line. I'm still doing fantasy analysis. These guys are rolling over themselves laughing. I'm going to keep going here.
I'm sorry,
But
you
the thing
dropped
with
it in
the
there. I couldn't.
Eagles
Matrix.
is
Drinking it was terrible.
it's all situational based, I think, a little bit with Barkley. When you look at his advanced metrics, he hasn't been as efficient as a rusher over the last couple seasons. His pass catching kind of fallen off a little bit. So it is a lot of projection based. And when we usually look at running backs that are more or less projection based, where their ADP is, those guys are dead zone running backs. And that concern enough in that downside of Saquon Barkley, if it's just doing the tush push, how's Barkley going to score touchdowns? So there are enough concerns
But I
for
feel
me
like
with
there's
Barkley,
less
even though
tush push this year
I
with Kelsey
see-
gone, don't you think?
Look, Jalen Hurts said 95% of the offense is different. That means 5% of it's the same. What 5% do you think stays the same?
Yeah,
Probably
but
the tush
I
push.
would venture to say 90% of that tush push success is because Jason Kelsey is an absolute
But other
monster at
teams do
center.
it too, not to the same
They
level.
do it not
but
to the
other
same
teams still.
extent of how.
But
how
that doesn't mean you just
incredibly
get rid
well
of it
they do
altogether.
No, I wouldn't
That's
say you
what
get
I
rid
would
of it
say.
altogether, but I think it's not going to be quite as prolific as it's been in the past for them.
I would
That's
agree.
my argument.
But if Jalen Hurts scores 10 rushing touchdowns, that's still not necessarily going to help Barkley be your hero running back. So I think that given also his injury history, his older age, and the fact that we talked about this in some of the free agent shows where running backs that bust are sometimes guys on new teams. So I think that
Sure.
there is enough downside case with Barkley that I wouldn't want him as my hero RB, and I would rather look at someone a little bit safer, I think, even though I do recognize he has a lot of upside in the Eagles offense.
Kyren Williams, I don't view as a hero RB. One great year, it was prolific, it was terrific, or one great second half, if we're really going to get, granular on it, plus some of the foot issues. I don't see him as such. Erickson, do you see him as a hero guy?
Not specifically, and the only way that I would feel really comfortable having him be my hero, be my Batman, is if I'm getting Blake Corum, his Robin, right with him during the draft. If I'm investing high in draft capital to Kyren Williams, I'm getting Blake Corum on my team. I'm not going to be caught. I'm not going to be caught, or in trouble without Kyren Williams. And I want to make sure that I have Blake Corum in case Williams goes down, because I think Corum can really handle that workload in case of a Kyren Williams injury.
So we are going to talk more about handcuffing. If you do this strategy, is it a good idea? Is it not? Which particular? So in your opinion, Kyren is a yes if you have the handcuff of Corum only.
Yeah, because I think that's how you're playing the approach. You're willing to sacrifice another roster spot to lock and load, I have Rams RB1. And that player, whether it's Kyren, whether it's Blake Corum, will be a hero running back.
So do you have to be more aggressive on Corum than everybody else? You have to take him around sooner? Or because otherwise, is it a potential fail if you don't get him?
I think that it's not super... You don't have to invest a lot more to get him. He goes in the double-digit rounds. So you took him in round 9 versus round 11. Does that really make a difference? When you look up and say, when you actually have to use Blake Corum, you're going to be glad you spent you reached on him per se. The draft wizard is going to say, you reached on Blake Corum, but hey, I got Robin.
Okay, fair enough. Debro, Kyren Williams, hero for you or no?
I think he's a hero running back. I mean, really, now I will say I think he's a more volatile selection for this type of draft idea that we're going to go with hero running back. But I will say if you're willing to invest in volatility, willing to take the risk, I think Kyren fully can be a hero running back and without even drafting Blake Corum. Because again, if you're investing the equity in him in your drafts, if he busts, fine, whatever. Like I'm probably messed over anyway, but then my team falls into probably like a zero running back team. But if Kyren hits and he's still that guy, he's still the top, because he was RB2 in fantasy points per game last year. Even with Corum taking some of the late game volume away, he's still probably a guy we're locking into 17, 18 touches per game. I don't want him to get into that 20-25 range like per game because I want him to stay healthy. But if he still hits on the ceiling that he showed us last year and he's a top 5, top 7 running back, he can definitely get there. And I'll push back against Andrew here. Like, I think that he's fine selecting him. Now, are you absorbing more volatility by not drafting Blake Corum? That's fine, but then you're just drafting like you're right. And if Kyren hits, then good. Your team's going to be
fair
good.
Enough. Good point and counterpoint there. Derrick Henry, he's on another team, so Andrew must not like him. He's on a new team. He's also 30, which is the same age Andrew is now, so I'm guessing you also now realize that, that's the end once you turn 30. For me, Derrick Henry is still absolutely hero RB. I feel great about him, and I love the fact that sometimes, every now and then, he slips into that third round. I've seen it happen a few times now where I just absolutely love it. Most of the time, you still got to go round 2, but that's exactly where I want to live with Derrick Henry. So, in your opinion, Derrick Henry, age, new location, some of those things are red flags, but he's still a king for you.
He is. King Henry, we have made so many bets against him in numerous years on this show and out in social media, but he's going to fall off. And I'm tired of it, man. I'm not.
I've made more money on Derrick Henry than any other running back in the last 5 years.
It's really me and Erickson. Okay, I know you've not dissuaded the king.
I respect.
I get it.
Talent, Derrick. Henry
I'm bending the knee this year. Okay, I'm bending the knee and I'm kissing the ring. I'm all in on King Henry. I'm fine.
There you go. Andrew Erickson, the other hand is here for you to kiss the ring as well on Derrick Henry. Would you like to?
No, I think that he's fine in a hero
RB
build.
He's fine. That's all you have for Derrick Henry.
Yeah,
the man
he's
of
fine
1,000 yards
because
every
you
year?
have to have him score 15 plus touchdowns because he doesn't catch any passes, and he's a game script
Okay.
dependent running back. So
Has
there are
been in
What's
the
the
holes in
game
his
past.
script of the
game.
Ravens? Hold on. What's the game script of the Ravens historically? Just curious.
They are facing the toughest schedule this year, so it's probably not going to be as fruitful. So just saying. And he's not going to be on the field in passing downs. He doesn't catch passes. That matters, especially in full PPR. So in a half PPR standard, I think that he's more of a better hero RB because I think that he has a safe floor because, like you said, the offense system around him is going to be really good. He's going to rush for a lot of yards, but you score more points by catching passes than putting up rushing yardage.
I'm not saying Derrick Henry is going to be CMC, but aren't some of those he comes off the field during passing down? Aren't we attaching all those narratives to Tennessee and his usage during there?
Mm-hmm.
He's on a brand new team with a brand new coaching staff. Could he
Yeah, but
run
they
more
like to bring
routes
in those
this year?
guys on third down too. You'll see the those
Lamar
other running
doesn't
backs.
throw the ball to running backs.
I'm not saying he's going to catch 70 or 80
massive
passes.
sample size of this. He doesn't throw to running backs. He's not going to throw to Derrick Henry, the running back that's never caught
Okay,
passes.
fine. Over under 35 receptions for Henry
Under.
this year, Erickson.
Under.
Over. Fine. Bet it. Over.
That,
I'll take
35
the
that
over.
doesn't
catches.
matter. All that matters
He might
is
score
the-
more touchdowns, honestly.
All that matters is the yardage and the touchdowns. And his number's a joke right now. In Vegas, it's 925 and a half. We already did a betting pro show, Erickson, and I yesterday.
Really?
925 and a half.
Wow.
I already smashed the
Wow.
over on that. And
Wow.
then I also have him to lead the league in rushing this year because, again, Baltimore runs the football more than any other team. And they needed desperately to have somebody there like a Derrick Henry who can actually handle that workload because everybody who they've had previously, the Dobbins and the Edwards and all these other guys, they haven't been able to do that. Travis Etienne, I know, Erickson, this is one of your favorite guys. I assume he's a hero for you, yes?
Yes, because
Okay.
he catches passes. There you go.
Scoring touchdowns at an incredible amount and having giant yardage totals offsets the lack of pass catching ability for Derrick Henry. It does every single year because every single year we look up and even in PPR, he is still on most good years when the Titans were halfway decent. Not like last year. He was right at the top of these conversations. Top 5, top 3, sometimes number 1, regardless. Like we have to still remember that happens and he can still do that. Travis Etienne for you, Derek Brown.
Nope. He's not
Why?
a hero for me.
Why
Because
not a hero for you?
We saw a tale of two seasons. Like he started off amazing and then he wilted down the back half of the season. For after week 9, Travis Etienne was the RB22 in fantasy points per game. He was averaging only 70 total yards per game. Look, you want to talk about here's the reality of Travis Etienne's season? His splits and what he did in the back half of the season wasn't too dissimilar from what DeAndre Swift did last year in that stretch. So I can't invest as a hero running back and tying the wagon to him being a locked in RB1. I can't do it. After seeing what unfolded last year and seeing all the pass game weapons that they added in Jacksonville this year. And Erickson, I know you agree with me on this. You think Jacksonville is going to air the ball out. They're going to throw it. I know you're super high on Brian Thomas Jr. Does some of that love for the passing game, does that not and I know you said Etienne's going to catch passes, but more pass game weapons there. Do you think he catches that many passes and he could be a locked in top 10 running back all year?
Yes, I do. And I would take him over Derrick Henry. And I have no problem saying that because look at the last 2 seasons. There's been 2 running backs that have totaled over 1,400 yards from scrimmage because receiving yards count here as well for fantasy points. It's Christian McCaffrey and Travis Etienne. Those are the only 2 running backs to do it. So again, hitting this point with the hero RB, I want someone that can be legendary, that can make a massive difference. From a yardage standpoint, it's only McCaffrey that's done more yards than Travis Etienne over the last 2 seasons. He has a massive ceiling. He has a 3-down skill set. He doesn't have a competition for touches in his backfield. I know the same things for Derrick Henry, but I'm just showing I think Etienne has massive upside in an offense that's going to be more productive. Again, you cited how bad he was at the second half of last year. Well, they had injuries. Trevor Lawrence was banged up. They didn't have Christian Kirk. The offense wasn't moving. They stalled out. So I like Travis Etienne. I'm buying him. I think he's discounted and disrespected once again. And I have to be the Travis Etienne guy again.
Yeah,
sure, I'll do it.
You have to. I'm on the fence with Etienne. I think he's right on the borderline. For me, it's not worth it where the ADP is. I think that's my argument. It's not so much the player, it's the ADP, where he's going. There's too many wide receivers that I like. I want to get Jalen Waddle. I want to get this guy. There's different guys in that range that I just value more as players independently of position.
But you like
that's why
Derrick.
Etienne's a failure.
You like Derrick Henry
and I've
more
got
than those
receipts for
receivers.
you. In PPR leagues, his RB finishes since 2019. You ready for this? 2019 RB3 in PPR. In 2020, RB2. Now, he was RB16 in 2021, but he only played 8 games. 8 because he got hurt, and he still played up to RB16. Then he was RB4 in 2022 and RB8 last year. He's had double-digit touchdowns every single season since 2018. So yeah, that's what a hero
I'm not
looks
saying
like.
that he can't
All
score
heroes
double-digit
don't wear
touchdowns,
capes,
but
some
that
of
doesn't
them
mean
wear
he's going to be a top
crowns.
5 running back. Gus Edwards was outside the top 30, and he had how many touchdowns last year? 13, 14?
Hold up.
Gus Edwards one off as though and that even marks the consistency that I just threw out there, because your notion that somehow just because it's PPR that Derrick Henry's not a hero running back, I think is false. He is a top 5 running back being drafted in the 2nd round or even slightly later, depending on how your league approaches things. And there are a lot of people, I think like you, Erickson, that says, oh, it's PPR. He's not going to catch 30-something balls. And guess what? He don't have to, because he's already proven in all of those seasons, he never caught 35 passes in any of those years, and he still finished as a top 5 RB in 4 of the 5 seasons where he was actually healthy. Just saying.
Okay, I'm still taking Travis Etienne.
That's fine. That's perfectly fine.
And you said that you would take Derrick Henry over those receivers. So Henry or Waddle, who are you taking? Henry?
Ooh, if I'm going hero RB, I'm taking Henry. And in most leagues I am, because I do believe that I can make up that ground later with some other guys like the McLaurins of the world who are being underdrafted, and T. Higgins who are being underdrafted. So still another line. Henry's that line for me. To me, it's Henry over Williams over Etienne. That's my rankings. Isaiah Pacheco at number 10. I want to get into him. Before I do, I want to remind everybody, if you want to, take some of these things we're talking about, go turn them into cash. The best way to do that is to go over on DraftKings, one of the sponsors of the show today, and an official sports betting partner of the NFL. DraftKings Sportsbook is available, and if you're new to these things, like we're talking, hey, Derrick Henry rushing total. If you're where I am, you bet the over. If you're where Erickson is, you bet the under. It's a great way
I didn't say to bet the under on his rushing.
No,
Don't put words in my mouth.
The under. If you're where Erickson is, you bet the under.
I'm taking the under on his catches. That's what I'm betting.
Put some cash in your wallet and put some money in Erickson's mouth over at DraftKings. When you bet $5, you get $150 in bonus bets instantly when you use the promo code FantasyPros. Again, that promo code FantasyPros for new customers only at DraftKings. The crown is yours. Isaiah Pacheco. No more talk of crowns and kings. Derek, before the show, you were talking about Pacheco, and maybe you're having an eye-opening moment. Now, last year in our Madden game, I will say,
here we go.
He did rush for 385 yards against you. It was an incredible output. I've got the screenshot still in my phone. So question, is that what's really leaning on you? Is that Madden performance? But honestly, what have you seen here recently that's making you believe that Pacheco might be a hero?
Just out of spite, I want to lower him in my rankings just because of that. As soon as you tweet it out, I'm going to have to sit here and follow it up in the replies with Pacheco's going.
I did it last year. Once was enough. It's fine.
Yeah, you're just going to wait until this weekend and then you'll tweet it out again.
Well, no,
I know what's going to happen.
I
know what's going to happen, man. But look, looking at what Pacheco did last year, yes. Prepping for this show, I do feel like I have been disrespecting Isaiah Pacheco a little bit in my rankings. I think he should be in this hero conversation. If you look at weeks 12 through 18, when we didn't have Jerick McKinnon, and we had Isaiah Pacheco in a 70% snap or higher rate in those 3 games, which is kind of the usage we're talking about he's going to get this year, Isaiah Pacheco averaged an insane 25.5 PPR points per game. And I know it's a small sample. I understand that. Nerf that a little bit. Like, that type of usage and that workload in this offense, yes, I will put out the PSA here. I have been disrespecting Isaiah Pacheco, and I need to tell people, look, we all need to, as a community, come around on Isaiah Pacheco, because after looking at those splits, what he did, that workload, yeah, I've been too low on him. He's a hero RB.
I love the offense. I love the player. Erickson, I struggle about hero RB in fantasy when it comes to Pacheco. How do you feel about him?
I think he's a hero RB, especially because he goes a lot later than a lot of the other guys we talked about. And I think that he has pretty strong upside case. There's no one in that backfield that we're worried about. Clyde Edwards-Helaire is losing his job as the RB2 to Deneric Prince, who was on the practice squad last year. Pacheco has clear path to a 3-down workload on passing downs in the red zone. Just a matter of, well, how many touchdowns does he score? Because the Chiefs just love to throw the ball in the red zone. They don't really run the ball a lot in the red zone. So that's the concern where, okay, maybe he doesn't get there with the touchdowns, but the Chiefs offense just scores so many touchdowns. It may not matter if his share of the touchdowns isn't massive high, because he's part of an offense that is top 5 in the NFL in total touchdowns. So I think, I'm not sure if you're alluding more to the injury concerns with Pacheco, but I mean, it's running back, right? All these running backs have injury concerns.
Injury concerns, not so much style of run compared to the frame, along with the injury history. I think that's it for me. And also knowing Patrick Mahomes just a year removed from 5,200 passing yards, where they might be right back into throwing the ball a ton. I think last year you saw a lot more Pacheco because of the lack of ability of the wide receivers to catch a football for the Kansas City Chiefs. What about Devon Achane at 11? Erickson, do you see him? I know this is kind of a dangerous one here. Is he a hero RB, a guy where you say, I'm going to draft Devon Achane, he's my hero, and then I'm going to wait a long time and that's okay?
No, I don't think he's a hero RB guy for me. And that doesn't, and don't get me wrong, I like drafting Devon Achane. I like him at his ADP, but I don't like him as part of a hero RB build because he is a player that I think it's going to be a lot of ups and downs. There'll be some games where he is absolutely nuclear and you love it. And there'll be some games where, they just decided to use Mostert more today, especially early on in the season when they're still kind of figuring out the running back deployment. So that's my only concern with Achane, where if I'm looking for more consistent production following this hero RB strategy to a T, well, I don't think that Achane is really that guy. He doesn't, even last year, he wasn't consistent. No, that wasn't his thing. And I think that matters with, hey, I need to get these hero RB points every single week. Well, one week Achane was there. He was your hero. And the next week he vanished because Miami had a different game plan that particular week. So that's my only pushback with Achane, not as a player at his ADP, but in this specific strategy.
Derek, you're from Louisiana. You got a little bit of a born gambler in you. Are you gambling on Achane as a hero RB?
I am. And what I'll say with this, does he fit the perfect idea of what we've laid out here with hero running back, in the sense that I know he's going to be a locked in RB1, in the sense of he's going to get 70, 80% of the snaps. He's going to be a workhorse, all those things. He doesn't fit it in that way. But I think when we look at fantasy points per game, and if he's scoring that type of, or putting up that type of production from a fantasy production standpoint, then yes, he does fit the mold. Because if the roles in this backfield flip, if he is operating as Raheem Mostert this year, Mostert was RB4 in fantasy points per game. Achane himself was RB5 in fantasy points per game last year. So not necessarily in the purest sense of the draft strategy of hero running back and the volume and everything like that. But really, that's not why you're drafting Achane anyway. If you're taking the swing and embracing the risk of drafting Achane, you're embracing efficiency. You're embracing this backfield, but as you love to say, Joey, the worm is going to turn, and Achane is going to be the lead guy, and it's not Mostert. So in that realm, yes, I think he does fit the diagram of being a hero running back.
I hope so. I hope he's not the worm that makes you sick at the bottom of an old tequila bottle from the 80s. That's what I hope for Devon Achane. I love the talent, too. As a hero RB, I ain't there yet, but it would not shock me if he ended up if you drafted him this way and you're going the Derek Brown route on this one, it would not shock me at all if this ended up becoming true in 2024. Two more guys, Rachaad White, Joe Mixon. I want to talk about these two guys as a pairing. Rachaad White, very steady. I think boring is unfair, because you think it was much better than people gave him credit for, but kind of solid and boring, and that's okay. And then Joe Mixon, kind of the same, but at the same time now he's on a different team, and sometimes that, as Erickson pointed out, is not always the special sauce here. So Mixon, Rachaad White, either of those two guys for you, Derek Brown, hero RB worthy?
I think both of them can fit the bill here, but if I'm picking between them, I vastly prefer Joe Mixon. I think he fits this to a T. And when we're talking about flipping the strategy on its head, and most people, when they think of hero running back, it's I'm drafting a running back in round 1 or round 2 to anchor that room. You could still accomplish this strategy while taking Mixon later rounds, like 4th, 5th round, where he's going in your draft and the ADP on which site you're drafting from. I think he is the way where you can flip this on its head, and you're still building a hero running back team, but you're not paying up in round 1 or round 2 to do so, because Mixon's going to get all the freaking work in Houston. He's getting all of it. We saw Devin Singletary got all of it last year. No, I don't care about the camp buzz. D'Amico Ryans is out there telling anybody with a microphone right now that, yes, Dameon Pierce is looking good. Jawar Jordan, who's going to return kicks this year, people, is looking awesome in camp. He's talking up everybody. He's doing what a head coach needs to do. We all know at the end of the day, they brought Mixon in to be the bell cow in this offense and paid him after they got him. he is a perfect hero running back where you can get him, where you don't have to draft him in round 1 or round 2.
Erickson, White, and Mixon. Either of those two guys heroes for you in 2024?
I think they both fit the mold, like Debro said, but I prefer the Rashad White side. He's younger. I've already seen him under this head coach. I know it's a new offense, but maybe that means his efficiency will improve, right? That's like the biggest negative on Rashad White. He's not a efficient running back, but if you just watch him play, it's not like he's an inefficient running back because he's not explosive. He is explosive. Just watch him play, especially in the passing game. So I think Rashad White could be in for a career year in terms of efficiency in this new Liam Cohen offense, upgrades across the offensive line. And to me, you're just taking out less variables when you're looking at, he's already been on this team before. He was better in year 2 than he was as a rookie. He's already improving. He's a potential player that maybe hasn't hit his ceiling, whereas Joe Mixon's been, yes, the guy that's always gotten all the work, but has always been that player that consistently leads the NFL in red zone touches because he gets stuff from inside the 5-yard line so consistently every single week. So I do like Mixon, especially when he goes in round 5. Sometimes he falls a little bit because there are some more concerns with him. He's also dealing with a hamstring injury, which I don't like from an older player, just in general, as they're installing this new offense. But with Rashad White, I feel like he may not have hit his ceiling quite yet. Again, he didn't even get to 1,000 rushing yards last year. So yeah. I do slightly prefer White, even though he goes sometimes a little bit ahead of Joe Mixon. I'm okay paying up a little bit.
See, we can agree on things. That was easy. Yeah, look at us together on Rashad White, holding hands the whole way through. You mentioned earlier, Erickson, about handcuffing Corum and talking about some other RBs here on this list. How apt are you to go after either the hero RB handcuff or just a very high-end handcuff when you employ this strategy? Andrew, how do you approach the handcuff situation? Because I know that's something that people get nervous about, this strategy, because they say, well, what if, worst case scenario? So how do you back that up? Are you more apt to go after the exact handcuff, or is it really just about the specific player? Like, yes, with Kyren Williams, I do want Corum, but say if it's Saquon, no, I'd rather have, I don't know, a Rico Dowdle or somebody else that you think like is going to be the second running back who might get more play than people realize.
Basically, to me, it comes down to my confidence in that second running back stepping up into a larger role in that offense. So when you sent over the list of names, I basically came up with, so if I get Bijan, I do want Tyler Algier. I'm cool with investing into Tyler Algier. Right. Elijah Mitchell, if I draft CMC, for some reason I didn't draft Breece Hall or Bijan Robinson, I get CMC, then I want to have Elijah Mitchell on my team. Blake Corum, like I mentioned before. And then the last guy, if I'm investing in Achane, well, I'm just going to take Raheem Mostert because he's going to be involved early on in the season. If I have to start both Dolphins running back, oh no, I started both Dolphins running backs. This is the worst thing ever. It's probably not that bad, at least to start the year before Raheem Mostert gets hurt. So those are like the 4 players I kind of called out. But in your Saquon example, I don't know who the backup is. I know that some people like Shipley, Kenneth Gainwell's still there. So we don't really know. And again, I could be wrong with some of these other players. Maybe it isn't Blake Corum, but I'm confident in Corum's ability and what he did at the college level and how the draft capital they invested in him, that he is going to step into that Kyren Williams role if he was given the opportunity to do so. So it really does. I don't want to say depends, but I hope I provided some examples.
No, I think that makes a lot of sense. Derek, how does the hero RB strategy affect how you draft tight ends and how you draft quarterbacks? Are you when you go that early one running back and then you have more leeway with those picks, are you apt to go after elite quarterback or elite tight end, or are you just pounding that wide receiver table? Or maybe it's none of the above. Maybe it's just BPA the whole way.
I think some of this comes into league size. Smaller leagues, I want the elite onesie positions. We've talked about this on previous shows, so I'm more likely to prioritize heavily elite quarterback, elite tight end in those builds. In 12-team leagues and larger leagues, then really it's just BPA for me. And if I'm filling those spots, if the guys fall to me, I'm really just trying to stay liquid and fill out the rest of my draft with the best player that I can.
All right. We're going to talk about the zero RB strategy, what it really means, and how you can employ it successfully in just a second. Before we do, I want to remind everybody too, before football season starts, and it's really starting soon, it's time to get out of the house, do some fun things, go to a comedy show, go to a concert, go to a ball game, go do something. Or hell, when NFL season rolls around, go to some NFL games. Use the Game Time app. It's the best way to get tickets without all the fees and the nonsense. You can see exactly where you're sitting. And if you're like me, you love to get last minute deals on tickets for concerts too. I am going to 7 concerts in this calendar year, and half of them are because of the Game Time app too. I did not get the Olivia Rodrigo tickets though on Game Time. My daughters barely spoke to me for 3 days after, but that's okay. Don't wait too long. Download those Game Time apps right now. Use that promo code FantasyPros and you'll get $20 off your first purchase. Again, create an account, redeem the promo code FantasyPros. That's FANTASYPROS and get $20 off your first order over at Game Time. Download the app right now. Use it and you will be very happy you did because last minute tickets, lowest prices are guaranteed only on the Game Time app. When looking at the zero RB strategy, boys, I know this is something a lot of people, it's like the fashionable thing. I'm a zero RB guy. It's like the same guys who only drink IPAs, and it makes me angry. It makes me want to slap somebody around because I don't really like IPAs. I'm more of a whiskey guy.
I wish Pat was here.
Cocktail fella. Give me a cigar and a whiskey. I'm good. Here's a question for you, though. Zero RB doesn't mean you never draft a running back. It really means you're going out there and you have an approach where you're not drafting RB heavy early. That is, I think, the illusion that a lot of people have. Now, some people will push the limits of that. Derek, do you believe some people push the limits too far where they end up doing their roster at deficit because they wait too long to start putting running backs on their roster?
I think it's possible. In most iterations of when I'm drafting a zero running back team, one, I don't go into any draft saying to myself, I'm going to go with a zero running back team. I don't. But if how we're building, and people can go check out all the mock draft shows on YouTube right now. I have built some zero running back teams. We have zero running back teams that are built in those shows. It really depends on how the board is falling to me. And if I get elite wide receivers that fall a spot or two, or how the build of my team from the draft spot that I have is going, then yes, I have no problem embracing that type of format. And really, I think at its heart, when I look at building a zero running back team, I'm probably not drafting a running back until round 6. So really, and in the construction of a 12-team league, assuming you are starting 3 wide receivers, I want 3 wide receivers, an elite quarterback, and an elite tight end, and then I will start looking at running backs. Now, is that shifting some depending on how the draft is falling? And maybe I take a running back around 5 and then a wide receiver around 6. That's fine. But really, at its heart, you're looking at, I'm going to fill out the rest of my starting lineup with the best players, hopefully all elite players that I can, and then I'll look at the running back position. Because, and really, the entire onus of this draft strategy is we're embracing the volatility of the running back position, that injuries do happen, that the elites are few and far between. The difference makers year after year are not as plentiful as they were 10 to 12 years ago. Wide receivers are all the rage, man. And if you look at this, like, just look at last year, and it bears it out perfectly. Out of the top 10 fantasy point per game players from the flex position, so just looking at running back, wide receiver, and tight end, the top 10 players, 60% of them were wide receivers. If you zoom out even further, the top 24 flex players, almost 59% of those players in points per game were wide receivers. This is a pass-first league, and NFL teams are changing it. There's more running back by committees. So,
especially as the schedule gets bigger every year too, and 18 games is coming. Like that's obviously something that's right down.
Agreed.
The pipe. Andrew, question for you: the zero RB strategy, is it too dangerous? Is it really something that you think is viable, or you think it's just kind of a fad in the sense of like people want to overdo it and end up with rosters that have just giant gaping holes at running back in it?
Well, I think that it actually changes depending on year to year. Really, it depends on what the player landscape is. How is late round tight end this year versus last year? How is elite quarterback this year versus last year? Because, okay, you're committing, I don't want to draft running backs. Okay, I can get behind that. So you got to draft someone else instead. You're going to draft receivers. D-Bro just talked about, we love receivers. They're great. So what about tight ends? So it means you're going to take an elite tight end. Do you have an elite tight end that you want to draft? Or are you concerned? We talk about how running backs get hurt. Tight ends get hurt a lot too. And last year, elite tight end was not a great strategy. So if you went in zero RB and had an elite tight end, well, that didn't work out for you. So I think that's kind of gets lost in the sauce here where you're so hyper fixated, you can't draft running backs. But then, okay, then who are you drafting instead? Like,
I don't draft running backs. I drink oat milk lattes. I'm very specific about my lifestyle.
Basically.
Low T moves only, boys. That's all we got.
So that's the way I view it. And personally, this year in particular, that's why I prefer hero RB versus zero RB. Because when I'm looking at the landscape, Debo talked about how when you go 0 RB, you're most likely going to draft an elite quarterback. I don't really want an elite quarterback this year because I see so much value in that late round quarterback territory. I want Jaden Daniels. I want Trevor Lawrence. I want Tua. These guys go so late. So I don't feel the need to got to take Mahomes, where I could just take another stud receiver or an elite tight end or a legendary running back. And that's the big point with me. If I go 0 RB, that means I can't draft Bijan. I can't draft Breece Hall. I think those guys could score more fantasy points than any other player this year. And to have a strategy based around not drafting the guy who could score the most points, that to me seems, okay, wait, we got to take a step back here. We want to draft those players, right? We want the guys with the most points.
How dare you use such logic?
That's
on
my
the show.
pushback with 0 RB specifically in 2024, just because of the way I'm viewing the board. So that's kind of my pushback on.
Wait, so
why
in
I just prefer the
2024, you
hero.
think it is a viable strategy or it's not a viable strategy?
I mean, you can do it if you want an elite quarterback, but I would rather have a late round quarterback. And that means to me, I'd rather invest in more wide receivers, more tight ends at the elite level. And I think, too, what happens is if you load up so much on wide receiver, maybe you're feeling less apt to take a shot on some of these rookie receivers because you look at your lineup and you see, I already have all these receivers I'm starting. I don't need as much upside on my bench, where we see these rookie wide receivers really make a big difference, especially in the second half of the year. So if you have a couple extra less receivers that you drafted, okay, well, now you're going to be more open to taking a rookie receiver instead of another running back or a backup tight end or another position.
I think to that.
I was going to say, do you agree with Andrew's statement about this is a year where he doesn't think, like, he thinks there's depth at quarterback, and you can argue really good depth at tight end this year too, by comparison to last year, that maybe this strategy of the 0 really isn't one you should be chasing?
I think I would never walk into any draft saying to myself, I am locked in going to draft a 0 running back team.
Sure.
But if the draft board falls that way, I have no issues with it at all. I think with any draft strategy, we're looking at, you're bracing volatility, you're playing injuries. That comes down to any draft strategy in fantasy football, period. So I don't have a problem with it. I don't think that, like, there should ever be a draft where you're walking in saying, I'm specifically doing this, locked in, because you're not going to stay fluid. You're not going to adjust to how the draft is going. So I think it's perfectly viable this year in 0 running back.
Right, like if you got a 6th overall pick and you have, let's say Bijan goes, CMC goes, Breece Hall, all go in the top 5 picks. It's like, well, maybe CeeDee Lamb made it to you or somebody like that. Like that, okay, well, you have to pivot, and that's just going to be the way it goes. Question for you, Derek. We'll start with you on this one. When you go outside the first 13 running backs, because I think the 13 is where you're going to have the conversation. The guys after 13, I just didn't see any hero value there. When you look at 13 to 30, the rest of this pack, it's got Jacobs, James Cook, Walker, Kamara, David Montgomery, Aaron Jones, and you got Stevenson, Connor, Zamir White, Najee Harris, and then, of course, Mostert, Swift, guys we're not sure about, how much their roles are in their respective offenses this year. Tony Pollard, Jalen Warren, another guy with Najee Harris, still question marks. Brian Robinson, Eckler's there, Zach Moss, we know Chase Brown's rising up draft boards, and Devin Singletary. Those are the guys from 14 to 30. Who stands out to you is, okay, if I do go 0 RB because that's the way the draft falls to me, what are some of the names in particular that stand out to you that you are circling on your draft board and using your cheat sheets on, DraftSync and things like that with Draft Wizard to make sure that you actually get some of these guys? Who are those names?
So looking at this just from how I approach 0 running back, and if I do deploy that strategy, I'm looking at players outside of the top 5 rounds. Because like I said, I'm going 3 wide receivers, quarterback, tight end. So looking at the players that are outside the top 60 overall players, the names that I specifically want to highlight here that I love this year, it's a 5-pack of running backs. It's Ramondre Stevenson, it's James Conner, it's Zamir White, Brian Robinson Jr., and Devin Singletary. I think we are sleeping on all of these players as far as the volume, the upside, and their ability, where people will look at those players and say they're classic dead zone backs, blah, 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 blah. I think each one of these players has the talent and has shown at various points in their career they have the efficiency, and they're going to have the role that where I don't have a problem investing in. And I've done it in previous mock drafts, guys. Like, I mean, proof's in the pudding. I've deployed this strategy and walked out of some of those mock drafts with Brian Robinson Jr. and Devin Singletary leading the way as my RB1 and RB2. I think we're sleeping on the volume and the upside of some of these offenses. So those are the 5 guys. If I'm going 0 running back, I'm immediately in round 4, round 5, setting my queue in Draft Wizard with those 5 running backs and saying, okay, let's see how it goes, baby. If I can, I want to try to at least get 3 of these guys as we're going through the next 2 to 3 rounds.
Stevenson, Connor, Zamir White, Brian Robinson Jr., Singletary. Erickson, do you like those names? You want to add some to that list or talk about any of these other guys? Or maybe there were some that you thought Derek missed that you felt like, hey, this guy, if I do, if the running back board just doesn't come to me and I end up having to pivot to more of a zero strategy just because of, sometimes you're stuck in the middle and sometimes, or on one of those ends, and all of a sudden it just does not happen for you what you plan to do. Who are some of these names in this range that you think you can live with and build a running back room on your roster?
Yeah, the name that I'll highlight that D-Row mentioned is James Conner, because I think that a healthy James Conner is a hero running back. That's why he goes so late, because you're worried about the injuries, but that's baked into his ADP. That's why you don't have to draft him as your hero RB. You can draft him as your zero RB, because we know that he's probably not going to play the entire season. But when you're looking at these late running back builds, it's important to look at, can they provide for me early season production? Can they let me figure out what I'm doing week 1, week 2, week 3? Because what happens with the volatility of the running backs? That happens over the season. It doesn't happen after week 1. Oh, all the running backs got hurt. Well, maybe that could happen this year. I hope it doesn't, because that would just really, really suck. But James Conner, week 1, he's going to be top 12 running back in the week 1 rankings. And you could say the same thing about Raheem Mostert. It's going to be hard to knock him out of, his week 1 ranking is going to be much higher than his ADP. And whether that's right or wrong, it's just the reality of the situation where he's going to be healthy for week 1, most likely. So those are things I tend to look at. But when it comes to who I'm honing in, whether I'm doing hero RB, zero RB, is Jaylen Warren. That's the guy I want the most, because I think that he provides a super safe floor. He's in a run-heavy offense. He catches passes out of the backfield. And it would not surprise me if he usurps Najee Harris as the season progresses. He is an interesting player because his ceiling has not been tapped into yet. That's what you have to remember with these RB strategies. You're not just, I want to draft bad running backs. You want to draft running backs with upside that are going late because they maybe haven't hit that upside yet. Jaylen Warren has massive upside. So that's who I'm honing in on, whether I'm doing hero RB, zero RB. I don't care how many running backs I'm drafting Jaylen Warren.
Oh, man.
Fair enough.
Love it.
The thing I like about Connor the most, too, is I think the handcuff is so clear with Benson and so fun, because I think the upside of Trey Benson is pretty good. So that's one of the roles, too, where the value of Connor is really good. It's really cheap. As you mentioned, probably not going to play the whole season, probably going to miss some games, but if, tragedy should strike, unfortunately, he misses an entire season, you would think, theoretically, Benson kind of steps into the major role there, and it goes right into it. Being more aggressive on a guy like that, a rookie coming in the league with some pedigree, makes a lot more sense. So that's one that I can really, wrap my mind around, too, is a really good value. Stevenson, too, hoping for a better year out of him with an actual offensive coordinator from the Patriots for a change. What about some guys later in drafts? Is it like the Wrights of the world, the Bensons of the world, and Corum? We are kind of already touched on those guys, but who else late for you, Derek, if you are zero or hero RB strategy, stands out to you as, okay, these are some of the darts I want to throw at running back later that I think, as the season progresses, have upside to either carve out roles or maybe potentially take over spots?
So I think we've mentioned a few of the names, but before I get into these late round guys, I want to highlight something specifically that Erickson brought up that I think is incredibly sharp. If you're building a zero running back team, you need to also look at layering early season production with these late flyers. Like, who is the ugly names that I could get early season production? They might not be great, they might not be sexy, but look, we're praying for 40 rushing yards and a touchdown. Okay,
then
he's
say
probably
Chuba Hubbard's name. Just say Chuba Hubbard's name.
Chuba Hubbard, Ezekiel Elliott, Gus Edwards. I mean, these are not sexy running backs. But look, if they start the season and we're looking at the first 5-6 weeks of the season, 7, 8, whatever, and you're rotating around with these guys and saying, I just need production out of those spots until hopefully these rookies, these handcuff backs, these guys that I'm drafting in the later rounds take over and smash. Yes, I think layering your rosters with a blend of high upside, maybe handcuff running backs with the boring touchdown laden guys early is an incredibly smart thing to do with a zero running back build. So going to those late round guys, a few of the ones that just off the top of my head that I love, Rico Dowdle is one. Again, playing against Zeke Elliott, I think Rico Dowdle could easily be the guy that leads that running back room in touches. It's not crazy to say, okay, really Ezekiel Elliott at this point of his career, we're really that worried about him right now? Like, what if Dowdle just takes over? Marshawn Lloyd, everybody knows my love for him and my disdain for Josh Jacobs. Trey Benson, we already kind of talked about with James Conner, when he misses time, not if. Jaleel McLaughlin, look, again, offering you standalone value, especially in PPR formats from the get-go, possibly. And then we'll go back to the Chargers. Pick your favorite flavor of running back for the Chargers. Is it Gus? Is it J.K. Dobbins? Is it Kamani Vidal? One of those guys, whoever falls to you in drafts, no problem with any of them.
Erickson, some late round RB names that you think could be useful in either of those two strategies that we just discussed.
It is J.K. Dobbins' RB1 season in LA. Just wanted to point that out there. The other running backs that I really like, so I mentioned Hubbard as a player that you could draft with one of your last picks in some of these home leagues, and he could be the week 1 starter. It's not sexy, but it's production, and sometimes you just need that in that RB2 slot while you're doing a 0 RB strategy. Same thing can be said for Jerome Ford. It looks like he's going to be the lead back with Nick Chubb, who is not going to be back for week 1 or the first month of the season. Don't know when he's going to come back overall, but Jerome Ford is going to be there for week 1, at least to start. And I know that there are some concerns with Deontay Foreman going to be the goal line back. So even if we get Jerome Ford from last year and Foreman is in that hunt role, okay, well, that's why Jerome Ford's going outside the top 100 picks, because he is not a complete back, but he's a starter who's going to get touches and carries, and that turns into fantasy points. And he can also catch passes too. So I like that with Ford. When it comes to just running backs, I think have a lot of upside. Chase Brown is one of my favorite guys. I know in the offseason I've been kind of, on that drumbeat for Chase Brown over Zach Moss, and I know Chase Brown is getting first team reps at OTA or at training camp right now. So that's it's heading in the right direction. Now it really does depend on how good he is in pass pro. Like ultimately it's going to seal his fate if he is better in pass pro or not, which I still don't know if he's improved or not. I'm still waiting for that beat reporter to tell me that. So until that, we got to, ears to the ground in Cincinnati. And the last guy is Zach Charbonnet. I think that he is a underrated running back going where he's being drafted. I think that he has a ton of upside. We saw him take on a full workload last year. Kenneth Walker has not been the bill of health through 2 seasons in the NFL. These guys have the same draft capital, both second-round picks. It's a new offense. What if the Seahawks decide, well, we like Charbonnet's consistency more than Walker's boomer bust nature? We like Charbonnet more out of the backfield. So I think Charbonnet has a ton of upside, and you're drafting him as a bench player. So he has injury contingent upside if Walker goes down, but he also has, I think, standalone value where what if in certain game scripts, he's the preferred running back over a Ken Walker? Again, both second-round picks, new offensive coordinator coming in. There's no allegiance necessarily to Ken Walker as the guy, even though he is the more explosive of the 2 running backs. Charbonnet's skill set is everything that Walker doesn't do well. So they complement each other very well, and I think Charbonnet has a lot of upside for that reasons.
Boys, I love when we talk strategy, and this has been a great show where we talked about 2 strategies that are very viable still in 2024. Different ranges, different reasoning. Make sure you listen to what the guys are saying here. Make sure you're able to apply some of this in practice too with the Draft Wizard. So download Draft Wizard app right now. Use some of these strategies. See how your rosters look. Remember, you can do a couple picks and then undo picks and then go back and continue to draft again. There's so many amazing features. If you've never used it, use it. And while you're at it, sync all your leagues for free. Use the tools of FantasyPros. They're free. They're fantastic. And I know there's a lot of other tools out there right now. People trying to pretend like they got tools. We have the tools here to make you a champion. And speaking of tools, gentlemen, I can't wait to see both of you in just a few days at dinner all weekend, hanging out, playing Madden, eating questionable food, and having a good time.
And drafting a fantasy team.
Drafting a fantasy team and the Flex League. So I did not defend my championship last year. It was unfortunate, but not as unfortunate as Derek's record in that league, which shall not be named. But hopefully, and I'm excited because all 3 of us are in that league together now. Erickson was in the other one. Now you move to Superflex with the big boys at the big boy table. Very excited.
So it's a murderer's row.
I mean,
really
to be honest, our teams were at the kiddie table
game.
last year, Joey. You didn't exactly make a ton of noise, so you talk trash about me. But
I made the ton of playoffs, buddy. That's what I made, Bubba.
Did you win the championship?
I did not. I can't remember. Did I defend my championship? That's the question. Oh wait, no, I didn't defend. No.
That would imply that you went made into the title game. You didn't do that either.
See you next time, folks.
Over under on Derek Brown's wins this year, 1.5.
Oh! Smash the over. Hopefully.
Smash the over. Do it with the Betting Pros app. That'll do it for us. But the story of the game goes on for my dudes, Andrew and Derek Brown. I'm Joey P. We'll see you next time, kids. Happy drafting.